Hello. Welcome to part one of Advanced Drumming. I'm Sandro Dominelli. Thanks for joining me. I'd like to start off with something that I've been asked a few times, more than a few times, about how and what to play for fills in any particular style of music or any particular groove that you might be working in. Something that I've often encourage is the use of books. Sometimes there's some really great stuff out there to visually see the notes and work them out physically on the drums and how to incorporate them with the groove you're playing, such as a rock groove or an R&B groove or a funky groove or something like that. So I highly encourage that. However, sometimes I feel like if you want maybe more of a simpler approach, I've tried to develop a way of approaching fills basically the same way I play a groove. In other words, whatever I'm playing in the groove, I tend to use for fills around the drums. And I would like to maybe start with something that's a little bit simple, sort of funky, and play a few fills and then talk about it a bit, and then we'll just go from there. All right, here it is. 1, 2, 3. So, basically, what I'm trying to do there is really play the groove around the drums. At the same time, it's a fill. So I'll break that down a little bit so you can get an idea what that's like. So my groove was this: 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm going to take that groove and I'm actually going to play it around the kit. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm going to combine, let's say, a couple bars of the groove and a couple bars of the fill, just so you could hear, hopefully, the connection between those and how they really are the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, whatever groove you might be working on that's a little bit more, say, advanced for yourself, something that you've been working up and trying to get the speed or just get the accuracy or just get all the notes right, that's an approach that you could take to the groove that you're working on. So I'm going to try a little something here for you, a little bit more quicker and maybe a few more notes. I'm also going to break down the groove a little bit for you, but before I do that, I'll play it for you a little faster, a little bit more busier, and of course play the groove around the drums as fills. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. that groove is pseudo based on paradiddles. So a paradiddle, as most of you know, I'm sure, is a series of singles and doubles. And just for those who are just learning the paradiddle or hearing it for the first time, it goes something like this. Right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left. Also, you could say paradiddle. And so, back to that groove I was playing, it's sort of based on a paradiddle. And it, in its most raw form, it would sound like this. Basically, I'm playing the paradiddle between the hi-hat and the snare drum and adding a bass drum on beats 1 and 3, I believe. 1, 2, 3, yep, that's right. So now what I'm doing is I'm moving the paradiddle around a bit, so to speak. In other words, I'm not playing it verbatim. I'm not playing the every note all the time. So I'm starting to shift the notes over a little bit and maybe drop some notes, maybe add some notes based on some other grooves or feels that I've been working on beside this. So here's an example of that, and I'm going to do just the same tempo too. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to do it a little faster now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, once you've sort of developed an idea of how you'd like to approach that sort of paradiddle funkier thing, then it's the same concept to start to play around the drums. So I'm going to do it slow again for you. And here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. And once again, I'll do it a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe a little faster than I thought I should do it. Anyways, yeah, so what you're trying to do is really incorporate the feel, the groove that you're playing into your fills. And so it breaks sort of the idea of how and what to play, which is sometimes a little contrived when it comes to playing fills. This way, back to something I mentioned a little bit earlier, is it really can sound musical. What's musical mean? Well, that's a tough question sometimes to answer, but I'm going to give it a shot. Musical can mean that it's within the music that you're playing. In other words, in our case, it's within the groove that we're playing. So it's not a departure from the feel we're playing. It's a complement to the feel that we're playing, the groove, the feel. Those are the same words or the same definitions to what I'm talking about. So I tend to feel that that is a really sort of simple approach in a way to getting some ideas across and to help the music continue to move forward. In other words, to have momentum and energy. I also like to call it uh, horizontal playing. In other words, the music's kind of going like this, the groove's going like this, the fills are going like this, as opposed to vertical playing, where the groove is kind of going like this, and then the fill is sort of vertical. It's sort of stopping and starting a new idea, and then continuing onto the groove that you're playing. So these are choices that you can make, choices that you can experiment with to see if it sits with your sort of playing, see if it's something of interest, how you would like to approach fills a little bit more. Um, Also, I find like if you're in a situation where you're soloing, back to that word musical, um, it can really help shape the feel, or again the groove that you're playing, to make it sound like it's very connected and not so much disconnected with fills that may not um, suit the type of groove that you're playing. However, I will make this disclaimer: there is great ideas out there right now, like especially with stickings and um, sounds, different cymbals and different um, uh, you know cymbals on the drums, all sorts of things going on right now in new music, which I really enjoy and really dig. So I encourage you to check that out. But back to fills, there's a lot of that opportunity as well to add on to this whole idea of playing the groove around the drums for some effective fills and some effective transitions. So I'd like to maybe just discuss a little bit about some transitions. Um, Basically, if you're playing a song that has, let's say, a verse and a chorus and a bridge or an interlude or a breakdown, setting those sections up is really key for a drummer. A lot of, I would say, of members in the band rely on us to help set that up dynamically, um, color with different sound of the cymbals or the drums, and just the energy overall. So I would like to maybe play again one of my grooves here, my token grooves, and just show you some simple little fills based around the groove, transitioning into another section. So, for example, I'm going to play on the hi-hat and the snare and bass drum. I'm going to do a little transition fill, and then I'm going to move over to the ride, and I'm going to call it, let's say, a verse here on the hi-hat. I'm going to do a transition around the drums, and then I'm playing the chorus, which is going to be a little bit different. So here it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, one thing I failed to mention before I did that is transitions. Um, I find the most successful ones are, maybe a couple of beats, 3 beats tops, but sometimes 1 beat, 1.5 beats, and I'll explain that really quickly. Do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So I just took a couple of beats there, I believe, and I just moved it around the kit and moved on to what was going to be my ride cymbal groove. So a lot of what happens in that situation is there's, again, what I had mentioned earlier, there's movement, there's just continuity between the groove, the fill, and the next section, which again can sound like it's musical. And that musicality is probably the most important thing when it comes to playing songs. Whether it's a pop tune or a rock tune or a country tune or an R&B tune, um, or even a songwriter folky kind of song. Um, that's really vital to the music and how the music will be interpreted by the drummer, but also how you're interpreting the song and how you're putting across the energy and or the dynamic. So it's those little things, I believe, that really help make the groove strong and make the tune that you're playing come across like it's supposed to, is basically what I'm saying. So how you can practice these approaches is really just find your favorite groove, something that you've been practicing like over and over. I've seen so many drummers who, and I think we're all the same in that sense, where we have a go-to groove or a go-to feel, and we feel confident with it. And that's the one I'm talking about, the one that you feel really good with, to just take that and move it around the drum set, like I had showed you a little bit earlier, and just experiment a little bit, listen for pitches on the drums, and I'm going to play these really quick. Sounds like Three Blind Mice. Three Blind Mice. But if you hear what I'm hearing, I get inspired by that, and so I use those pitches and that tone to help me color the ideas, the rhythms that I'm doing. So I could do it this way: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Very simple and very logical. Small to big. But now I'm going to use these pitches and try to experiment a little bit with them and try to get some different ideas with that rhythm that I played. Some different colors, rather. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 1, 3. So I'm just trying to see what I have to work with, the colors that I have, the paints that I have. Call these the paint brushes. And I'm just using these different palettes, these different colors, to bring something a little bit unique to the sound of what I'm playing rhythmically. I'm going to do one more that's a little bit more rhythmically involved. And here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I completely improvised that based on sort of memorizing these pitches in my head, or the sounds in my head. It's pretty simple because I know that this one down here is the low one and this one's a little bit higher and this one's the highest. So I have those sort of memorized and kind of know the length of the sound too, how long they last, and I'll give you an example of that. So they're quite even. That's not always the case, but they're quite even in length. So I'm using that length to take up space inside of my fill, as opposed to a deader sound or a more shorter sound where I would have to play more notes to get some energy. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. I look forward to our next one. And remember, keep grooving.